Rachel, and that's Bowie over there, if you can see him. And I used to be a pro stock trader on Wall Street, and I eventually quit because it just became so clear that that system was not working. And I know so many other people out there today, like more and more of us are becoming aware that the system just does not work. It doesn't serve most people. So I thought it might be helpful if I shared some of what I learned in coming to that realization while, working so closely, so directly within the old economic system. And I wanted to share solutions that I've landed upon as a result that I'm so confident can help all of us transcend that old system as it marches on toward its seemingly inevitable collapse. So I started my career as a pro stock trader when I was 24, and that was in early 2008, just as the market started crashing as we were heading into the Great Recession. So it was kind of a crazy time to learn how to trade because things were so uncertain and the government was bailing out the big banks that were failing. And that was one huge indicator that the system just wasn't holding up anymore. And there was all that conversation, if you recall, if you were like reading the news at that time, about the government bailing out Wall Street at Main Street's expense, at the expense of the American taxpayer, and how messed up that was. And I was learning how to trade and I figured out how to be profitable in that world. But then on a personal level, I was very aware that I was the only woman that was working at the first trading firm I started at. And that was true at 3 out of the 4 trading firms I worked at, I believe. At one other firm, there was one woman, and that was it. There was only one other female stock trader. And when I started at that particular firm that had one other woman stock trader, I was coming in and I'd applied, and I, at that point, already had experience as a profitable trader, and I'd studied economics at Duke, and I had studied at Dartmouth at something called the Business Bridge Program. So when I started at that job, that should have meant that I was paid a higher salary than everyone that I started with, all of whom were men, because I had more experience and a better educational background. I already knew how to be a profitable trader. I also negotiated the starting salary as well. But later on, while there, I learned, because I was friends with the guys that I started with, that I was actually being paid like a 15 to 20% lower base salary than everybody else, despite the fact, again, that the system would have me believe that I had the qualifications that should have meant that I was higher paid. Later on, when we got bonuses, which were performance based, I got a much bigger bonus than any of those guys that I started with because they couldn't discriminate against that. But that experience made me really start to question the fact that all my life I'd grown up and, been led to believe, like, if I get good grades, if I go to a good college, then I'll get a good job and they'll pay me fairly. They'll pay me because they'll recognize the value that I'm bringing to their firm. And I found out that discrimination in the old system actually had a higher priority than rewarding those things. And so I really started to question the design of the system itself and the discrimination baked into it. Outside of that, as a trader, I also became more and more aware of the fact that money is not scarce. Money's made up, first of all. It was invented. It's something that men came up with thousands of years ago. The current versions of the economic system largely rest on ideas that, like British white men, Adam Smith was Scottish, came up with in the last 250-ish years or so. And so there are a lot of pieces of that system that have really outlived their usefulness. I became aware of that idea that, like, money isn't scarce because governments just generate it constantly. They just print money. They do it in a way that is supposed to be constrained and controlled. But that's why inflation exists, because governments just continue printing money, which means that money's value erodes over time. But on top of that, as a trader, I started to become aware of this manufactured scarcity that existed within the world of trading, in that, so we're trading money anyway, which isn't real. But if I made $1 as a trader, it was zero sum. It meant that somebody else had to lose that dollar. It manufactured this sort of sense of like a winner take all sort of mentality. And it was entirely fabricated. It was just of the design of that system. And then that manufactured scarcity, we could see it play out across the world, like as far as the global economic system reaches. because then we're given that sense that money is scarce. And even though that's a lie, it puts us into competition in instances where collaboration would be much more beneficial for almost everyone involved, except for the very few people who are extracting the most from that system. And so I started thinking about all of those things, but I didn't know how they could be solved or addressed at that point in time. And then after like yet another gross instance of misogyny at one of my trading jobs, I just quit altogether and left the sector for good. Fast forward a few years, and I started hearing about Bitcoin. This was in 2013. And I remember it was really this moment of feeling like the universe or whatever energies, higher energies, were really trying to get me to pay attention to Bitcoin because people from very different areas of my life who did not know one another were all telling me about it. And I looked into it more so and, like used my old stock trader training to recognize that around that time, September ish of 2013, the price had dropped sharply because this website called Silk Road, which was doing a lot of illegal things, was shut down, and the feds in the US seized $30 million worth of Bitcoin that that site held. And so, a thing that you learn when you're a stock trader is to look for those opportunities to buy low when the fundamentals of something look sound. If the price drops, that can be the best opportunity to get involved. So I bought as much Bitcoin as I could afford when it was at about $90 a coin, and it ended up being a very profitable trade. But more than that, I was so excited about the fact that Bitcoin had an anonymous creator and it was introduced because the person or the people who created it recognized that the old system was failing, that we needed new decentralized alternatives that were outside of the narrow control of these gatekeepers who weren't doing a very good job of managing the old system. But then over time, problems happen in the world of cryptocurrency too. And that sort of same toxic masculine energy that I saw in the legacy financial system has also come to the world of cryptocurrency. I wouldn't say it was there so much in the beginning. It was more like people that, like in the early days, it was people that were really excited about what Bitcoin might be able to do. And some of them were more tech focused. It just wasn't like a finance bro or like the typical crypto bro stereotype that we see today that in my experience was so involved back 2013 or before. And I started to recognize that it was repeating a lot of the old mistakes and leaning too far into this greedy energy that was about extraction rather than creating value for everybody involved. But I also saw that we could use the technology, this decentralized blockchain technology, to address a lot of the problems that I had experienced personally with discrimination in the old system. It made me question this idea of like, what if we tried something where instead of perpetuating a system that is zero sum, that is about manufactured scarcity, that leaves no space for giving, which is why we have to have nonprofits next to the for profit organizations in the old system, because the old system does not allow for generosity. It doesn't even consider that as a factor. It thinks that self interest is the only driving behavioral motivation. So we have to have nonprofits. But what if we use blockchain technology, this new technology, to transcend that binary, that for profit, nonprofit binary, and came up with a way to allow people to actually build wealth because they helped others, because they helped people in need? What if they gave to someone and they received cryptocurrency in thanks? Not only did the gift cost them nothing in a monetary sense, cryptocurrency had gone up so much in such a relatively short amount of time. Maybe these generous people, in a system designed in this way, could actually see huge increases in their wealth because they helped others. And so that's what Seeds is working to do, which is our crypto mutual aid project. It's grounded in this idea of giving and building a bigger pie for everybody involved because you helped someone in need. And I think that that's really an antidote to several, if not all, of the core problems that I saw present in the legacy economic system. Because the other piece of this that I should mention is you can redeem a seed to ask for help when you need it and then receive that as a gift too. And everyone who's giving to your need is receiving seeds and thanks as well. So it's just growing the ecosystem with every act of generosity. And in a system like that, at scale as it grows, I imagine a world where we get away from working jobs that we hate. Instead, we can redeem a seed to ask for the money that we need to take care of our expenses for 3 months or something so that we can work on another project that we know is more aligned with like our unique purpose on earth. A system like that at scale can help us get away from having to trade our time for money, which I think is another one of the huge flaws still lingering in the old economic system. But seeds continue to have challenges left over from the old economic system, specifically that discrimination I talked about, women being paid less. That shows up in venture capital as well. Venture capital is the branch of finance that funds tech projects, and 98.1% of venture capital dollars go to organizations founded by men. So Seeds had to contend with that, and we had to figure out ways to survive despite this lack of resourcing, with the hope that longer term, what if you don't even have to raise money from venture capital? What if you redeem a seed to get the funds that you need from the Seeds community instead? That would be really awesome if Seeds rendered that extremely discriminatory, racist, misogynistic sector obsolete. So that's what Seed's been working to do. And part of the piece now at this stage to deal with the fact that that lack of resourcing is still apparent is that we can create our own decentralized mutual aid pool that we can grow without having to deal with the old system. So to help grow that, we recently started this initiative to invite social good organizations to be a part of that pool. And we'll give you a big chunk of seeds and thanks. We can keep growing the mutual aid pool, contributing to seeds and asking for help through seeds when we need it. And then that old system can keep doing whatever it's doing. It can keep continuing to what looks like, in my opinion, impending collapse. It just isn't working. It's just clear to me that it's going to fall. And we can instead devote our energies over here to growing something that is working to transcend those failings.